Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce a powerhouse in the world of finance, real estate, and personal development, Kristi Nowrouzi. With an impressive 24 years of experience in the finance and real estate industries and 14 years as a loan officer, Kristi has guided countless individuals towards homeownership, financial empowerment, and success. She's the author of 2 highly regarded books, First Home, Where to Start and How to Win, and Finish Financially Free, and the host of the popular podcast, Credit Coaching by Kristi, where she shares expert insights on money mindset, credit, and taking control of your financial future. Beyond her professional work, Kristi serves as the vice chair on the board of directors for the nonprofit iDignity, and an organization committed to restoring dignity and providing essential resources to those in need. She's also deeply passionate about teaching, specializing in sales strategies, soft skills, and overcoming obstacles, empowering individuals and businesses to thrive. Today, Kristi brings her passion and expertise to help us unlock breakthroughs in our business using the keys to communication. She'll dive into emotional intelligence, personality profiles, and how these tools can elevate the way we connect and collaborate. Please join me in welcoming the inspiring and dynamic Kristi Nowrouzi.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. What an absolute honor to be able to share some time with you today and talk about some really important matters. 95%. Harvard Business Review and the author of this book right here, How Customers Think, says that 95% of buying decisions are made emotionally and not logically. Although when we speak to our clients, we're often speaking logically and not emotionally. Dale Carnegie had said once that when dealing with people, remember that you're dealing with creatures that are not making decisions from logic, but rather emotion. So we're going to be talking about 3 really important matters today. So I'm so glad that you are here with me. Would it be worth 30 minutes of your time for us to talk about very important, business shifting, mind expanding, money making, client raving topics that you can put into your business and your life today? Yes?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, glad you're here with me. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence. Then we're going to talk about the heart of communication. And then we're going to talk a little bit about working with different personality types and how you can speak their language. But I'd like to get a feel for who's in the room today. So if you are in sales, will you raise your hand? The whole room should be raising their hand right now. We're all in sales. We're selling all the time. Could we also agree that we're all the CEO of our own life and our own business? Awesome. Well, in order to understand others, we first must understand ourselves. Socrates said this 2,400 plus years ago. Know thyself. So let's get into a couple of rhetorical questions. Rhetorical meaning just talk to yourself on this. And speaking of talking to yourself, what do you say to yourself? Surveys and studies have shown that about 70% of self-talk is negative. So when you're talking to yourself, how do you speak to yourself? What kind of messages are you saying? If I could hear them, would I be appalled or impressed? If your best friend knew what you were saying to yourself all the time, what would he or she say to you? And would she take a stand for it? How do you respond when you make a mistake? Is it self-loathing? Are you punishing yourself? Or is it an opportunity for some coaching and some growth? Consider that how you speak to yourself might be similar to how you speak to other people and you don't even know it. Do we need to have a loving and encouraging and empowering shift in how we speak to ourselves? Perhaps. I want to tell you a story about my dog, Cooper. Now, I also have a dog named Zeke, but today we're going to talk about Cooper. And Cooper might be similar to somebody you might know. So I didn't want to pick on any one person. And if some of the traits that I shared with you are similar to the traits of the person sitting next to you, please don't turn awkwardly and uncomfortably towards them and point them out. Cooper has no idea of space and time. You know, normal dogs, when they come and snuggle, they find their space, they create their space. Not Cooper. He throws half of his body awkwardly around half of my body, and it's okay for him. The door opened yesterday, and he saw somebody walking by. He goes running, darting out the door. Doesn't hear me yelling, and he knows the rules, but he's above authority. After I feed him, he will incessantly lick the bowl. Cooper, stop it. Cooper, stop it. You know what I have to do? I have to take it away from him, as if he's entitled to more. He deserves more. Does this sound like somebody you might know? He growls and scoffs at people walking down the sidewalk, kind of like how I've heard some people, and probably me many of times, scoff and use judgment when I don't know the full story. A lot of that is a lack of emotional intelligence. See, I found myself crying one time, and Zeke comes over and pushes his head up against me, and he snuggled me and said, "I'm here," right? With his body, he told me, "I'm here." Cooper awkwardly rolled over onto his hip and started licking himself inappropriately. He lacks emotional intelligence. So let's talk about some of the things that show up with emotional intelligence. It's self-awareness. It's self-regulation. It's social awareness. And it's empathy. Sometimes we hear the word empathy, but do we really know the definition of empathy? It's showing understanding, connection, allowing a space for somebody to feel heard and seen without judgment. Self-regulation, I like to call self-leadership. Feels a little more empowering, but how we control our actions, our reactions, and our responses to others is the difference between high emotional intelligence and low. See, we can't always control our surroundings or circumstances or what happens, but we can control how we react. And other people will often follow your lead. That is not only self-leadership, that's a leader of others. Social awareness. Seinfeld, I love all of their shows about nothing. Do you remember the one about the close talker? Right up in your face. It's uncomfortable. Have you ever been in a conversation where somebody was too close, or asking awkward conversations and you're literally trying to walk away from it and they just keep walking with you as if you're salsa dancing and they're moving with you? We've got to control how we react to other people and show up with empathy. So I'm not going to dive into all of these stats, but this is a great opportunity to take a picture of this so that you can bring that back, because it will change the face of your company, your team, your relationships, your friendships, and connections in general. The one that stands out to me the most is top performers hold 90%. They rate at 90% with emotional intelligence. That one really stood out to me. As sales professionals, we have a tendency to talk and share and talk and share and talk and share and word vomit all over people. What if we took a different approach? As sales professionals, we should be doing less talking and more listening. Do you know the #1 complaint, according to a survey from the National Association of Realtors? And I'm bringing this to us today because most of the room is in the real estate industry. Do you know the #1 complaint about realtors in general was? Any guesses?
Communication.
Communication. Boom, nailed it. Lack of communication. Do you know the number one complaint from buyers about their agent?
But they didn't listen.
Say it one more time for the room.
But they don't listen.
They didn't listen. Is it possible that they listened just fine? They didn't ask questions and then listen. I think that's the difference maker here. Number one complaint. So how do we fix that? We ask more questions. And how do we do that? We're wrapping up football season right now. And there's an important stat that I've noticed with football games, and it's called time of possession. And I learned this from Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall. I've got his book right here too. And Larry Kendall says that time of possession is what will dictate a win from a loss. And that's often true with football games. The team that has the greatest time of possession is usually the one that scores the most points. So let's have our clients score the most points. We want them to win. And for you sports fanatics in the room, if you're thinking about teams right here, think about your client not as the opposing team, but as the other part to make a complete whole in the equation when you're working together. So the time of possession should be 25% of the time should be you speaking, 75% of the time should be them speaking. Well, how do we accomplish this? How do we get somebody else to talk? Ask more questions. So before we move on to this one, I'd like to ask the question to define the term sales professional. If we're 100% in the room in sales, how would we define sales professional? Just so we all are clear on the same meaning.
Problem solver.
Problem solver. It's the best answer I could have asked for. Problem solver, absolutely. What about a doctor? Is a doctor a problem solver?
For sure.
You have a health issue, they have the answers, the remedy, the prescriptions. What if you walked into your doctor's office and you sat down and said, "Doctor, I'm sick." She writes you a prescription and says, "Next." Malpractice. We would call that malpractice. But how come with most sales professionals, somebody comes to us for that product or that service, we write them the prescription and we say, "Next." We don't ask any questions. We've got to do a health assessment. We've got to know about their past, their genetic past, and also their experiences too. So a really great way to get deep with people is from this method called GROW. It's from Sir John Whitmore in his book called High Coaching Performance. And the first G stands for goal. So we've got to get to know what their goals are. What's their ultimate timeline? What is the ultimate win for them? When they accomplish their goal, how are they going to know it? What's potentially standing in their way with reality? So we know what the goal is, but what might be standing in their way? For realtors, it might be they just signed a new lease. They don't have enough in savings. They need to start a new job. They need to relocate. So what's their reality? Then we'll look at options. See, if you have two choices, you don't really have choices, you have a decision. We need more than two choices. So even if they're not really great options, it feels good to have more than just two to select from. So work through all the possible options. And then finally, this is where you get to shine and show them a way forward. One of the things that I think is probably the most powerful tool that you can gift somebody is the power of permission to use imagination. We are in the backyard of the most popular castle in all the land. Tinkerbell's castle at Disney is not just there because somebody watched a few movies. It's because families, kids, young and old, get to come and use their imagination. We've got to invite imagination into the conversation. In addition to allowing permission to dream, we have to be able to pull recollection in. So here's one of the most important questions you can ask somebody in the world of real estate. Tell me a memory you have in a home that you absolutely loved. You're unlocking a memory that they may not have even known is something that they're desiring so much. You could show them 10 homes, 50 homes, 100 homes, and if they didn't know that they were trying to recreate that one thing, they might walk in and say, this is just not the thing. I had this conversation literally yesterday morning. I asked this question to somebody. She lit up like crazy, and she said, let me tell you about my favorite kitchen I've ever had. It was huge. It had an island the size of Texas, and it had a centerpiece in the island for cooking. I'm not a big fan of that. She loved it because she could face all of her friends and her family and not be staring at a wall, not feeling cornered. She said, if I could recreate that, I don't care where the house is, I don't care how many bedrooms there are, I don't care about what it looks like, I want that kitchen. You might be surprised what you find when you ask those questions. Someone might talk about kicking a ball around in the backyard with their pop. The backyard might be the most important part. The story that stood out most to me was when I asked this question, and she said, I'll live in any home but a condo. I could have just said, okay, no condos and moved on, right? What's important about not living in a condo? And she said, it feels just like an apartment. I'm in an apartment now. I've been in an apartment my entire life, and I don't want that. What's important about not living in an apartment? She related that with kids that taught her things she shouldn't have learned because of her environment. She caught that as listening to other people's stories through the walls that she was forced to listen to because the walls were thin. She associated that with Section 8 housing because that's all she's ever known. And asking what's important about that and what's important about that helped us get to a place and a story for her that she didn't know was present. She wanted to create something so much more fascinating for her son. Is that just a transaction? Not anymore. We've got to ask more questions, and you'll never be accused of not being the one that didn't hear your client. The other thing is, after you've asked all the questions, you're gonna say, did I miss anything? And even if they say no, you're gonna follow up with another question. And this one's the really important one because the did I miss anything, who was it about? It was about me. Is there anything that you want to add? And even if they say no, this is where it gets awkward, friends. Awkward. You're gonna pause for 7 seconds. It's gonna feel like 20 minutes. Is there anything you wanna add? No? Okay, then let's go. You're giving them a safe place to dream, to go back, to make sure they've given you all the information so you can serve them very, very well. You're also going to practice in communication with simplifying very complicated topics. In real estate, we throw around the term contract to close, contract to close, contract to close, like it's no big deal. Oh, it's contract to close. If you're working with a first-time home buyer, or maybe somebody who hasn't done this in the last 50 years, or a widow who's getting ready to sell her home and move in with her kids, what's contract to close? Find a way to take very complicated situations and statements and explain them. Most importantly, ask for them to repeat it to you for clarity and to make sure that you understand and they understand the same meaning. so much gets lost in meaning. When I'm not teaching about sales and personality profiles, I'm often talking about credit and money mindset and budgets. So a lot of times I'll ask people, who in the room has ever created a budget? And the room gets weird. Everybody kind of has a moan or a groan or a, oh, I was forced to do that once. Why is that? Why do we put meaning to the word? It's just a thing. And it's because most of us, when we got to create a budget, we're probably broke as a joke and didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. So of course we're gonna have this negative correlation with that word. But what if I was making so much money right now, I wanted to be a really great steward of my money, and I wanted to make sure I'm maxing out that 529 college fund for my kids. And I want to make sure that I'm maxing out my retirement. I've paid for that European vacation in cash. And I've got all the things working for me. Would a budget be powerful then? It would have a different meaning. So keep in mind that people come to you with their own meanings deeply engraved into words that we don't know. And the only way to unlock that, to know it, is to ask for clarity and for them to repeat what you've said to make sure that we've got clarification on that. And then look for cues. You know that our body language says more than any verbal communication. You might see somebody when you're talking, their eyes are darting across as if they're fact-checking what you're saying, or they're trying to pull something up from their prior recollect of, do I know what they're talking about right now? Maybe their forehead drops. Maybe they start fidgeting. Maybe there's a big sigh. Stephen, I noticed you sighed when I asked you if you would be open to looking at short sales and foreclosures as potential homes to purchase. What brought on that sigh for you? And you might tell me, I was 12 when my parents lost their home to foreclosure. And it rocked my family when we got to move in with my mom or grandma. And I don't want to experience that from somebody else's loss. Would that be important to know before you start showing them certain homes? So pick up on those cues and then match them. So different personalities are going to react to different situations very, very differently. I want to share a story with you about a contractor who worked as an engineer for SpaceX and NASA. And I was introduced to him from a realtor, and he calls me and says, hey, I'm looking to buy my first home. Somebody told me to call you for financing. I went into consultation mode. I was going to show him how I had his back. I knew all the things. He could trust me. Let's go with all the information. Let me start defining this. I'm going to tell you all the timelines. And I went, whoa, 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 whoa. He didn't choose to work with me. Was it because somebody else's rate was lower? Closing costs were lower? They cared more about him? It's because I didn't speak his language. If I started by asking questions, I would have learned he's an engineer. He's an engineer brain. What might you guess engineers need immediately? Numbers, data, and not roundabout numbers, okay? It's not gonna be about, don't give him an about. It is pennies, people, exact. And if I didn't lead with speaking his language, of course he wasn't gonna choose to work with me. And I don't wanna experience that kind of loss again. I have a 14-year-old who's living in our home right now. He's been in the United States for 15 months from Haiti. He speaks Creole. I don't speak Creole. We try to communicate, and it is awkward, weird, uncomfortable for all. And when we're done trying to communicate, he walks away and I walk away going, did she even understand what I said? Did he even understand what I said? Is it possible your client walks away feeling the same way? We've got to speak the same language. So I want to invite you to take a few inches on your paper here and draw a cross perpendicular line, and we're going to write just a couple words and go through some very important but very basic elements of the human behavior, and it's based off of what's referred to as the DISC personality assessment. There are many different kinds of personality assessments out there. We're going to use a really basic level of DISC today. And what's so important about this is just paying attention to pace and priority. Pace and priority. So on the top, you're going to put the pace word fast. And on the bottom, you're going to write the pace word slow. So we're going to be paying attention to how somebody moves through time and space. Are they like a rocket and you just got the stream behind and you can't even see them in the room, they're off and running? Do they want to hang out, enjoy the moment, have a cup of coffee, get in a conversation? They might be on that slower pace. And now we're going to focus on the priority. Is their priority task focused or people focused? And now I can tell you, DISC can get very complicated, but it doesn't have to be. We just need to pay attention to pace and priority. So I'm going to break it up into quadrants now. So we'll start with the top one where it's a fast-paced and they're task-focused. These people generally are CEOs, business owners, they're running teams, they're a leader. The weight of the world can be on their shoulders, and they usually are the ones making the big decisions. They are very driven, they are very direct, and they have to move at a fast pace. When you come into them, especially on an unscheduled meeting, they don't have much time to meet, and they're already 3 meetings ahead of you in their mind, so they're often not present. They're forced to make fast decisions, and so they're good at it. And they are doers. They get stuff done. They're task focused. I want to share with you their need is results. How to validate them. How to have them feel heard, appreciated, understood is respect. That's what they desire the most. So if you want to validate somebody, show them respect. Let's stay on the top quadrant and move over to the people side. These are your influencers. They love enthusiasm, excitement. They're the ones that when you walk into the room, they're talking to 4 people sharing a story, and even when they walk away from those people are still talking about them, right? They're the life of the party. They're often salespeople. Go figure. They love enthusiasm and zest for life. They get bored pretty easily, and they're moving at a fast pace. They too make quick decisions. However, their quick decisions are spontaneous and from the gut, not from here. Remember, 95% are emotional decision makers. These individuals are going to have the largest percentage of buyer's remorse. Make sure you confirm that they made a great decision. Their need is to be liked. Make sure they know you like them. But in order to validate them, show them recognition. If you're in a team meeting, call them out, show them praise. Make a post about them on social media. Brag about them in front of somebody. That's going to help keep them going. Now let's move down to the bottom quadrant here where it's people focused still, but now we're moving at a slower pace. This is actually a slightly larger percentage of the general population, and this is the steady eddies in the room. They are fine with status quo. They prefer traditional. They're usually the ones that are speaking up for the little guy. They really value relationships. They need safety. And to validate them, let them know you got their back. That they're more than a transaction, that you're in a relationship. These individuals are the most loyal of them all. So I'm glad that that's the largest percentage of the general population when it's breaking down these four difference. And staying on the slow pace, we're gonna go over to the conscientious, the cautious, the engineers in the room, the data collectors. These individuals have an Excel spreadsheet for their grocery list. When they budget, it's to the penny. They need data, they need information, and it needs to be exact. So not only do they need information and data, they need to be right. If you tell them, ooh, that's not wrong, you may have lost them forever. Now, no one usually is one thing. I am high I, which is in this corner, and in work mode, I'm direct and driven, results oriented. In life, I'm your steady Eddie, loyal, relationship bound. Here's what's the most important takeaway from all of this. When you can identify who somebody's default way of being is, and you can identify your default way of being, so you can now match and mirror in a true and authentic way. I'm not asking anybody to be anything outside of who you truly are, but we all have the ability to work with numbers and data, to be results oriented and driven, to be enthusiastic and inspiring, or to be that safety focused, conscientious, trust driven in a relationship type of personality. Agreed? We can all be that mix? What I'm suggesting is, when you can speak somebody else's language, you help them feel heard, seen, validated. You build rapport and unshakable trust. You can get to agreement faster. You can close more deals with ease and confidence. And that could be life-changing, right? I want to suggest a few books to dive into if you love the thought of emotional intelligence, if you love the thought of communication, and if you love the thought of personality types. I've got a couple of them here if you want to jump into them. Ninja Selling is real estate specific and something that I feel is the Bible for realtors. So if you've not read it yet, I definitely suggest that. My favorite book, and I've probably read 10 on emotional intelligence, is Daniel Goleman. He is like the godfather of emotional intelligence. And he shares that messaging in a way that's actually digestible. You ever sit and read a book and you're like, I don't know what language you're speaking right now. He shares it in a way that can be infused, relatable, and then actionable. So I wanted to leave you with a couple of tools where you can build trust, build rapport, handle objections, and close more deals. Thank you so much for being with me here today.